In the summer of 479 BC, diplomacy in Greece ceased to exist. It did not fade away gradually. It was beaten to death in public. On the island of Salamis, during a formal political assembly, an Athenian councilor named Lycidas rose to speak. His proposal was simple, even rational by normal standards. He suggested that the Greeks should at least consider the Persian offer of peace. No threats, no betrayal, just discussion. He never finished his sentence. The other councilors did not argue with him. They surrounded him and stoned him to death on the floor of the assembly hall. When the news reached Athens, the violence escalated further. A mob of women stormed Lycidas's home, dragged his wife and children into the street, and killed them the same way. This was not an act of madness. It was a statement. Greece would not negotiate. Greece would not hesitate. Anyone who spoke of compromise would be erased. The trauma ran too deep. Thermopylae was gone. Leonidas was dead. Athens had been burned to the ground twice. Entire populations were living as refugees aboard ships or sleeping among ruins. The Persian invasion had stripped the Greeks of homes, families, and illusions. The only language left was violence. That mindset carried directly into the final confrontation of the Persian Wars, the Battle of Plataea. Although King Xerxes had withdrawn to Asia, the war was far from over. He left behind his most dangerous commander, General Mardonius. Unlike Xerxes, Mardonius had no interest in spectacle. He was not there to intimidate or impress. He was there to finish the job. Mardonius occupied the plains of Boeotia with an army that ancient sources place in the hundreds of thousands. While those numbers are likely exaggerated, there is no doubt the force was massive, experienced, and lethal. This was not the ceremonial host that crossed the Hellespont. Mardonius had dismissed the excess. What remained was a professional killing machine, heavy infantry, elite guards, cavalry drawn from across the empire, and archers drilled to fire in disciplined volleys. This army had already shattered Greek defenses before. Mardonius knew their weaknesses, and he intended to exploit them. To demonstrate his control, he burned Athens again. Whatever had survived the first destruction was smashed, toppled, or reduced to ash. Temples, houses, walls. Nothing was spared. The message was unmistakable. Resistance would be punished until nothing remained. For the Athenians, now homeless for the second time, this was the breaking point. They sent envoys to Sparta, not to beg, but to threaten. If Sparta did not march immediately, Athens would make peace with Persia. And with the Athenian navy at Persian disposal, the Peloponnese would not hold. The threat worked. Sparta mobilized with terrifying speed. This was not a symbolic deployment, nor a cautious advance. The ephors emptied the city. 5,000 full Spartan citizens, the elite core of the Spartan military, assembled for war. But the true scale of the mobilization lay beneath the surface. For every Spartan hoplite, 7 helot slaves were armed in order to march. 35,000 enslaved men were pressed into service, carrying supplies, throwing javelins, and following their masters into battle. Alongside them came thousands of allied troops from across the Peloponnese. Before dawn, an army of roughly 45,000 men vanished northward. When the Athenian envoys arrived to demand action, the Spartans calmly informed them the army was already gone. Mardonius was pleased. He withdrew from the ruins of Athens and positioned his army in the open plains near Plataea along the Asopus River. The choice of terrain was deliberate. Greek hoplites were devastating in close formation, but slow and inflexible. On open ground, Persian cavalry could encircle them, isolate units, and grind them down from a distance. Mardonius fortified his camp with wooden walls and towers, creating a secure base from which he could dictate the battle. He intended to let the Greeks come to him. When the allied Greek army arrived and saw the vast Persian encampment spread across the plain, their commanders refused to descend. Instead, they positioned themselves along the foothills of Mount Cithaeron, where cavalry could not operate effectively. A standoff followed. Days passed. Neither side moved. Mardonius grew impatient. To provoke action, he sent forward his cavalry commander, Mecistius, a towering figure, famously popular among Persian troops. Riding a magnificent horse adorned with gold, Mecistius led repeated raids against the Greek lines, harassing them with arrows and insults. Greek contingents began to buckle. The Megarians, pinned and bleeding, threatened to withdraw entirely. At that moment, a group of Athenians advanced to support them. In the chaos of skirmishing, an arrow struck Mecistius's horse. The animal collapsed, throwing its rider to the ground. What followed revealed the brutal realities of Persian armor. Mecistius was nearly invulnerable. Greek weapons glanced off his scale armor as he fought on foot. Only when a spear was driven through the eye opening of his helmet did he fall. The Persians launched a furious counterattack to recover his body, but the Greeks held. Mecistius was dead. Morale surged through the Greek ranks. But Pausanias, the Spartan regent commanding the allied forces, understood this victory changed nothing. The real battle had not yet begun. By August, the heat became as dangerous as the enemy. Encased in bronze armor, the Greek army suffered from dehydration. Their position in the foothills protected them from cavalry, but reliable water sources were limited. Pausanias made a fateful decision. He ordered the army to move closer to the Gargaphia spring near the Asopus River. Mardonius saw the opportunity immediately. Persian cavalry swept behind the Greek lines and intercepted their supply convoys. Hundreds of wagons carrying food were destroyed. The oxen and drivers were slaughtered. The Greek army was cut off. For 8 days, the Persians tightened the noose. Cavalry rode up daily, firing arrows into the Greek lines and retreating before any counterattack could form. Thirst spread. Tempers flared. Arguments broke out between contingents. Then Mardonius struck the final blow. Persian horsemen trampled the Gargaphia spring, turning the water into mud. The Greek army, nearly 100,000 men, lost its only reliable water source. That night, Pausanias ordered a withdrawal. The plan was to retreat silently under cover of darkness to a defensive position closer to the mountains. It required perfect coordination. Instead, everything went wrong. The center of the Greek line panicked and fled too far, retreating all the way to Plataea itself. On the right wing, the Spartans refused to move. Their resistance was led by Amphiaraus, a Spartan officer who considered any backward movement dishonorable. He publicly defied Pausanias, throwing a stone at his feet and declaring his vote against retreat. Time slipped away. The argument continued. Finally, Pausanias ordered the main Spartan force to withdraw without him. Only when Amphiaraus realized he had been abandoned did he relent, ordering his men to follow. By then, dawn was breaking. Mardonius saw the scattered Greek positions and misread the situation as a rout. He ordered the attack. Persian cavalry surged forward, followed by infantry and archers. The Spartans were caught mid-movement on open ground. Pausanias halted the army and ordered them to kneel in formation. Then he did something incomprehensible to modern minds. He ordered a sacrifice. As arrows fell in waves, Pausanias waited for favorable omens. Goats were slaughtered. The signs were bad. He waited again. Men died without fighting back. Helots, lightly protected, were slaughtered in large numbers. A Spartan named Lycidas was mortally wounded before ever striking a blow. His final words expressed not fear, but bitterness at dying inactive. Only after repeated sacrifices did the omens change. Pausanias rose and lifted his spear. The Spartan phalanx surged forward. The collision was catastrophic. Persian wicker shields collapsed under the weight of bronze. Spears shattered. Swords came out. The battle devolved into brutal close-quarter slaughter. The Spartans advanced with relentless discipline, step by step, shield to shield. Helots poured into the gaps, killing the wounded. At the center fought Mardonius, mounted on a white horse, surrounded by his elite guard. As long as he lived, Persian resistance held. The Spartans drove toward him deliberately. When Mardonius fell, struck down by the Spartan Nestos, the Persian army broke. Units fled toward the fortified camp. Artabazus, commanding a large reserve, chose survival and marched his forces out of Greece entirely. Inside the Persian stockade, thousands were trapped. When the Athenians breached the walls, the fighting became a massacre. No prisoners were taken. Ancient sources describe a slaughter so thorough that only a fraction survived. The Persian wars ended there. In the aftermath, the Greeks stood amid unimaginable wealth, gold, silver, luxury beyond anything they had known. Pausanias famously ordered 2 meals prepared, a Persian feast and a Spartan ration. He mocked Persian excess. History would prove the moment prophetic, Victory saved Greece, but it corrupted its heroes. Plataea was not a clean triumph. It was brutal, ugly, decisive. Thermopylae became legend because it was noble defeat. Plataea mattered because it was survival, and survival always leaves scars.